Operation Unthinkable, Scene 17, take 1998. Action!
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the History and Mystery channel. I'm your host, Chronicler, and I want you to like and subscribe. Now that you've done that, I want to delve into a story that will tell us about one of the most insane military plans in history. Operation Unthinkable, a plan made by the British, which could have started World War III just after World War II had finished. For our video of today, I made 4 chapters. And those chapters are the plan, military comparison, skepticism and opposition, legacy and aftermath. So let's start with chapter 1. The deadliest war in history had just finished and the victors were celebrating on the streets. The fascists had been beaten, but there were still threats to a lasting peace. The uncomfortable alliance between the Soviets, French, British and Americans started to collapse now that their common enemies had been defeated. This collapse would create 2 spheres of influence. On one side we got the American-led capitalist bloc, and on the other side we got the Soviet-led communist bloc. These blocs had the potential to cause World War III. As we know, during the Cold War we were always close to escalation, and the first time that it almost happened was just after World War II had finished. In the early days of May, with the end of the war in sight, Winston Churchill organized a meeting with his Chiefs of Staff Committee and told them that he needed a military plan which would, as I quote, impose upon Russia the will of the United States and British Empire. Even though the will of these 2 countries may be defined as no more than a square deal for Poland, that does not necessarily limit the military commitment. End quote. If Winston Churchill had his way, the Allied powers would have invaded the Soviet-controlled zones inside of Europe on the 1st of July 1945. This operation was codenamed Unthinkable, and the plan called for a massive surprise attack on multiple Soviet military positions inside of Europe. Churchill wanted to use British, American and former Wehrmacht soldiers for his operation. I know it must have sounded like a surprise when I said former Wehrmacht soldiers, but that was really the plan. And I have to say that the British government, American government and the Wehrmacht could all unite under their common hate for communism. The plan was to rearm with somewhere between 100,000 and 700,000 Wehrmacht soldiers. If the operation had started, we would have seen multiple fronts open up on the border between the Western and Soviet-occupied land. The British-led coalition would center most of their fighting in eastern Germany so that they could then try to push the Soviets across the Oder River, liberating eastern Germany and a part of modern-day Poland. The British hoped that this surprise attack on the Soviets would be so devastating that it would force them to enter into negotiations. During these negotiations, the British would then demand Stalin to give up his control over Poland. The reason that Poland was so important to the British compared to all the other countries that fell under control of the Soviet Union after the war was won was because the British had promised the Poles before World War II had started that they would guarantee the freedom and sovereignty of the Polish state. If the Soviets wouldn't open up for negotiations after the surprise attack, or if the British saw that they could easily beat the Soviets, they would try to push on and liberate all of the Soviet-controlled parts of Europe. With this operation, Churchill would try to force Stalin to reconsider his plan for Eastern Europe. It is said that Churchill didn't want to start World War III with this operation, that he just wanted to militarily overwhelm the Soviets so that they could change the deal that they had made on Yalta. So, how would the British-led coalition and the Soviet Union militarily compare to each other if this plan received a green light? A little side note, the United States was still committing a large part of the military power to the Japanese front in the Pacific, which basically meant that they could not fully commit to Operation Unthinkable during its starting phase. If we take a look at the total amount of military divisions that the British-led coalition could muster up to fight on the European front, and keep in mind that a lot of military personnel was still fighting in the Pacific and could not be used in Europe, we come to a total amount of 131 infantry divisions, and every division was made up of 15,000 soldiers, and 39 armored divisions, which are made up of an average of 258 tanks. When we take a look at the Soviet forces in Europe, we see that they would outnumber the British-led coalition with their 223 infantry divisions and 26 armored divisions. A British report that got delivered to Churchill would state that if the United States wouldn't fully commit to the operation, that their chances of victory became fanciful. The same report would also state that if the Americans were totally absent, the chances of winning became almost impossible. To give you guys a better perspective, the British-led coalition could only muster up 80 infantry divisions and 23 armored divisions if the United States wouldn't join the operation. This would then give the Soviet Union a numerical advantage of 3-1. What could possibly go wrong if Operation Unthinkable received the green light? There are a lot of possibilities, and most of them sound horrendous. That's not only my opinion, but also the opinion of multiple people involved with the planning of the operation. The first problem that they faced was that this operation could pull the world into yet another devastating war. And let's not forget that we were standing at the front gates of the nuclear age. The potential devastation of these bombs is known around the world, and the possibility that they would be used if this operation escalated into another world war was very likely. The second thought that worried the team was that this operation could create an alliance between the Soviets and the Japanese, who would then unite under the banner of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. With the help of the Soviet Union, it became more unlikely that the Japanese would surrender. This would mean that the war on the Asian continent would have taken the lives of many more people. Even though Churchill knew about all these possible outcomes, he would continue to push the British and their allies to give the green light for Operation Unthinkable. Churchill's biggest step back came when the Americans announced that they wouldn't join them. As we know, the plan became nearly impossible without the support of the Americans. Another thing that also caused some potential problems was that many of the British soldiers were not looking forward to cooperating with their former enemy, the Wehrmacht. And last but not least, we should not forget the immense size of the Soviet Union and the territories that fell under its control in Europe. Its size would have made it difficult for the British coalition to deploy their forces in a way that they would catch the Soviets off guard. During the Potsdam Conference, Churchill would learn that the Americans had successfully tested the nuclear bomb. This brought a spark of hope for Operation Unthinkable. At least, that's what Churchill thought. But he was quick to learn that the bomb was an American bomb and not a British one. He would have loved to use the bomb for his operation, but the Americans had other ideas, and the bomb wouldn't be used in Europe, but in Japan, on Hiroshima on the 6th of August and on Nagasaki on the 9th of August. Till this day, you can still feel and see the aftermath from the nuclear bombs in Japanese society. In July 1945, Clement Attlee won the elections in Britain and became the new Prime Minister. Thanks to the outcome of these elections, the plan got abandoned and a peace came to Europe. It was an uncomfortable peace, and the threats of a Third World War wouldn't disappear due to the fall of the Soviet Union. Well, at least that was something that most people thought when the Union failed. When the Union fell. Nowadays, the threats of a Third World War is again a hot topic in the media and in society. Operation Unthinkable was declassified and made public in 1998. One of the reasons that it made it public is because the Eastern Bloc had fallen and a wind of change had come to the world. I want to thank you all for listening. See you in the next one. And remember, history is written in mystery.